August 11th, 2023 is the 50th anniversary of hip hop. Why is that important? We're about to discuss it on Freedom Friday.
It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free.
Good morning, friends and family. It's another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. And I should say a very special guest, Gabe Bryant, is joining us today to talk about the 50th anniversary of hip hop. This is so interesting. I can remember being on the corner well, I can't actually remember the street, but being on the corner waiting for my school bus in Los Angeles, California, when I was in 5th grade, and somebody had brought a little radio, and we were listening to Rapper's Delight, and it was a song that was the first that had a very sing-songy feel, where we all knew all the words, right? So old people were listening to other types of music. This felt very kind of illicit and kind of like our own thing, and the old people hated it, and it wasn't R&B, and there was no love in it, and all that type of stuff, whatever. But it was sing-songy, and there was a sense that it was a secret, that it was our own secret universe, and it was funny. It was funny. It was partyish. There was something to it, and I've never forgotten the feeling of having a secret in art, like something that belonged to us years ago. And to think now, at my age, that it has been 50 years since the birth of hip hop is this really, really trippy thing, man. We have like all gotten old. If you go to the 50th anniversary of hip-hop.com, you will see that there is information there about the upcoming anniversary. And in it, there is a short history of hip hop. And it goes like this. In the rec room of an apartment building on Sedgwick Avenue, an 18-year-old Clive Campbell throws a back-to-school party with his younger sister, Cindy. Friends and neighbors dance to the familiar sounds of artists like James Brown, Aretha Franklin, only to know that history is about to be changed, not to know that history is about to be changed. Behind two turntables, Clive, better known as DJ Kool Herc, plays two copies of the same record, a technique known as the merry-go-round, where one moves back and forth from one record to the next, looping the percussion portions of each track to keep the beat alive, ongoing, over and over and over. And amongst this community of dancers, artists, musicians, and poets, hip hop is born. That is the short story, friends. And we're going to talk about this today, the importance of hip hop and the importance of the anniversary and the importance of, listen, bruh, if hip hop were a person, hip hop would be a member of AARP. I just want y'all to know this. Young people today listening to this, y'all don't know the half of it or whatnot. We're going to talk a little bit about it today. Sharif El-Mekki and Gabe Bryant, good morning, brothers. Thank you for joining the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Glad to be here as always, man. Hey, Gabe.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Always good to be here with y'all.
Gabe, tell us a little bit, so you heard me give this intro, and this is a very Wikipedia-ish intro to the topic. First of all, what's your connection to hip hop? What's your rate my intro? Give me
not the part where you can't remember where you were. That just started. that was the 50-year-old. I was on
the corner. I do remember, I can't remember the corner of. I was about to say corner of, and it was probably Don Milagro Drive and something.
What city at least? Give us what city. Where were you with LA?
It was LA. Yeah. That was 5th grade. I was in LA. And there was other stuff going on.
I thought you forgot what city you were in. That's why I'm like, yo, bro.
No. And this would have been a time where my folks would have been listening to Roy Ayers or Mass Production, or some of these. That would have been their thing. The funk would have been the closest to hip hop. Funk would have been the closest, but they were also listening to some jazz and some other kind of Grover Washington Jr. or whatnot. Maybe. But here we are listening to this hip hop, hibbity to hip hop, and don't stop. And I can remember the old folks making fun of us, kind of I'm listening to all that hibbity, blah, 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 whatever. And we were like, yes, we are. Yes, that's
Yes,
exactly
we
what we're
are.
doing.
I mean, the irony of that obviously is that, we know that Rapper's Delight, was a clear cut sample from Chic's Good Times. And so if they danced and loved that beautiful cookout classic of Chic's Good Times and they had to love, Rapper's Delight, but we understand, he put words on top of some of these samples. People don't appreciate them. I'll say this, man, when I think about hip hop, the first song I remember that activated me as a child was The Message from Melly Mel. I remember that playing out of every boom box. I'm talking about like the 2-foot high boom boxes on your shoulders and carrying it with the heavy diesel Hulk Hogan type arms. And yeah, man, The Message really just captivated me because that sample was so amazing. But also the picture that, Melly Mel was painting, was the neighborhoods that we were all growing up in. And so that was a powerful, powerful, powerful moment. My second sort of growth into it, I always talk about Lottie Dottie, from and Dougie Fresh, man. I mean, because just telling a story, right? Just the idea that, wow, we could also tell not only these ideas, but now we could actually craft this story, make it funny with this guy with this British accent. It's like, what's going on here? It's just something different. And I remember the first rhyme, and I'm sure that most people who are artists or heavy into the culture had that moment where they wrote down a verse. I remember distinctly the moment where I was sitting at my window, stopping and pausing as I wrote down the lyrics to Slick Rick's Mona Lisa. And that record, Mona Lisa, was so, I mean, it ran summer 88, 89, but more importantly, I remember just writing down this whole story of this guy meeting this woman and, ravishing, I impress, see, courageous, just all that was just in my mind. And so those are my three things that I remember most about my memories back in my early times.
Okay.
The Message is dope.
Yeah, and that's the one that I first remember. And I was introduced to it by, my best friend in elementary school, Nathal Musasa, Sakini Moultrie, who would later take this like so deep and committed to it that he later became DJ Miz and would go to competitions and was, one of those years rated best DJ in the country, up in one of those New York competitions. So, and so to see him in like the Source magazines and all that, I'm like, yo, Sakini, and his mom, Sakini's mom, is the one that told me, hey, you need to be a teacher, right? And go to this meeting, right? And so it all like kind of threads together, man. But hearing The Message, he brought the tape to school. And it was interesting because our 6th grade teacher, Mama Linda, was like, hey, can we play this? She was like, yeah, sure. It was during lunch. It wouldn't have been like today's school. Yeah, stop class and all. Like, it was like, yeah, lunchtime, you can play whatever you want. And that was my first time hearing it and listening to that joint, man. It was, I was like, wow, like, I couldn't stop, I was like, yo, let me borrow this tape and and so I'm listening as I'm going home and then coming back and, so I had to take his whole tape recorder, right? I didn't have that. But it was, it was just something like, wow, this is different, than the Stevie Wonder and Bill Withers that, my peoples were listening to, or went to the aunts. It was all Motown, all day, you know what I mean? So it was just different. And it did feel like, wait a minute, I think we're included in this audience, type of thing. And then I think the second one that he brought to school was the Double Dutch Joy. And I think that's what I started hearing. My mom was like, what's the matter with his voice? Is he sick? And is he got laryngitis? Like, what, what I mean? And I was like, I don't know. Like, that's just how he sounds, So that was the second time. So they would hear it, our teachers and parents, they would hear it, at least when we were playing with it, not necessarily engaged in it. It was when, in elementary school, we became Grandmaster Flash Furious 5. Like, we would try to write our own rap and, I'll you know what? I'll send that to you. We literally, one of my classmates sent she kept Ayana keeps all the notes for all our, just plans as 5th and 6th graders. Here's our plans for the world. So she has them. So she sent us, Joy, everybody's next name to who they are. Like Special K, Grandmaster Flash, Melly Mel. Like everybody chose somebody that they were going to emulate. But it was Public Enemy, man. that my mom, I remember sitting with my mom and she actually listening to it. That was the first time like she sat engaged and was like, like, oh, you know what? They're carrying a message, you know what I mean? And so yeah, and then just the connection to resistance, which I think some of it came out of anyway, right? Like just this idea, particularly when you look at like what was going on in Reaganomics and all the other things that had this deep impact in our communities.
I'm glad you mentioned Public Enemy real quick, because I've always said that, Chuck D, man, I mean, people can have their GOAT conversations and best lyricist dad and best MC dad and, best bar for bar, all these notions that are full on the conversations. But let's just put Chuck D in his own category.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's above and beyond what we've ever seen, and just probably there will never be another Chuck. What he brought to the table. I think it's just important just to always lift up Chuck D, man, and what he knew that he was doing. Like, he understood what he was doing when he linked up with those brothers out in Long Island and said, look, man, we're going to bring some revolutionary fervor, to these microphones. And more importantly, we're going to have the Bomb Squad, which is going to make this loud, boisterous,
audacious, right? Like,
to sort of backdrop these radicalized lyrics, man. Chuck D is a one of one for real.
So I remember being in a record store in Berkeley, California, and flipping through all the albums and coming across Public Enemy. And I thought, this looks different. This looks different than all the other ones. It wasn't any B-boy stuff. This looks serious. I was like, I better listen to this. And then I listened to it and I was like, these brothers are kind of angry. I was like, these brothers are not satisfied.
My 98.
I'm like, I think I'm gonna like this. And it became this illicit type of liking of something, because I was kind of like, it was speaking directly to me, but this is how it links backwards. This is what's so funny. Now, the story I told you about hip hop, Sugar Hill Gang, I'm sorry. That was 1980, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just told y'all how old folks were at the time trying to play it off as that's just talking over records. Brother Gabe, you said, Chic was the underneath, the music underneath that, right. But what the old folks were saying, you just talking over records, you just talking over other people's stuff, right? But wrap your mind around this.
You just talking over other people's stuff.
You just talking over other people's records, right? That's what old people were saying to us.
Old
right?
folks say the funniest stuff. It'd be true, but it'd be so funny how they frame it. Like they straight clown you like all the time. Like,
you just talking over other people's records. That's what they used to say about hip hop.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But get your mind around this. Both of you will appreciate this. My dad had nonstop Gil Scott-Heron going on in the house.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Gil Scott, The Revolution Will Be Televised, was 1971. That was 9 years earlier. Okay. So for 9 years, this Negro is playing Gil Scott-Heron and has nerve to talk about hip hop when it comes out. What is Gil Scott-Heron if not hip hop? If not talking over a record?
That's right.
Talking over, but it was their version though. Like, but that's
their version.
That's the interesting thing. But I'm glad we have a marker for like hip hop. But then when you see like clips of Black folks from like somebody posted something a long time ago. This brother was flowing. It was like black and white film. He's like dum 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 dum. You know what I mean? Like I was like, yo, that could, you know what I mean? I'm like, especially today. You know what I mean? I could definitely you just throw a loop on that joint. But yeah, it's all connected, man.
It's all connected, and they should never given us a hard time. Which, though, I will say, when I give young people today a hard time, I feel empowered to do it. I feel right. Now, when old people used to do it to us, I don't feel right. But what you just said is true. So Sugar Hill Gang is widely perceived as the first album. It's really not. What I just told you in terms of Gil Scott-Heron, there is no way to not think that hip hop started before there was something called the Sugar Hill Gang, right? And the core elements of what hip hop is, the scratching and the music, the mixing and the sampling and all of that stuff has deep roots in Jamaican culture. The call and response nature of rapping and MCing has deep roots in African culture, right? So the call and response, whatnot. So none of this stuff was without lineage. The day before, a young Black woman put the Sugar Hill Gang on a record label and put that out. It had roots that extended before that. And I think we do damage if we don't remember those roots today, because a lot of what corporate hip hop today is not, is synthetic. It's like the fentanyl version of hip hop, right? Somebody else stole the recipe, right?
Yeah.
This would be like somebody getting a KFC recipe and calling something like, KFG, right? Like,
Well,
that's what hip hop is today.
It's coming to America, McDowell's.
That's exactly what it is, McDowell's. All right, I want to ask y'all brothers about some of your favorites, because you both mentioned Public Enemy, you both mentioned The Message as being groundbreaking for you. I will add, for me, the first time I saw LL Cool J's "I'm Bad," I felt like damn. Like that was
Really?
that was Black Machismo times 10. That was like, this is what we're about to be. We about to do this right now, right?
I always say LL Cool J
That's
was hip hop's
hilarious.
first superstar.
You think so?
In my opinion.
Really? Wow.
Superstar. I think Curtis Blow was our first star. I think LL Cool J was our first superstar.
So I don't know what "I'm Bad" would have been, but it feels like Run DMC was our
That's
first
a group.
hip
That's a
hop.
group.
Okay, true. Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I feel like that was
DMC's
when it went big.
Run DMC's before LL, they was the most.
Yeah.
I mean, they was our Rolling Stones. They're our,
That's
all
it.
that. But I think as far as our first solo act superstar, to me, was LL Cool J.
So he would be like the James Brown of hip hop. You think, like the first kind of breakout? I don't know if I'm with that one, but we will see.
I mean, as far as crossover,
I'm trying to think of like who would compete with him.
He was played all over. He had the crossover records. He was on MTV and the box.
This is true.
But I could, again, it's for conversation. It's for debate.
MTV.
I mean, I
think,
appreciated
actually
him
did a lot,
more as he continued on his trajectory. I think when he first came out, I was like,
bro,
but
stop it.
I'm
His
serious.
first album was his baddest stuff. "I'm Bad," Radio, "I Can't Live Without My Radio."
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has things that are, but I don't know. It was, I don't know. It was something that didn't, but later, it was something that just didn't connect. You know what I mean?
What was the movie that he was in, that he was actually introduced in? I think it was.
Yeah, that was the Joe Run DMC.
I don't want to say it was Crush Groove, but maybe it was.
No, it was Crush Groove. I
think it was. Yeah, he walked in and the
came in and
bodyguards
goes,
about to stomp him.
Rocks.
Bro, the moment that was like, that was superstardom.
That was hard.
Being
That was
born
hard.
in that
was
moment
hard.
right
Crush
there.
Groove,
Stop
man.
it. When you said it took you a while to get to it. Another moment that I had that I felt like, wow, this is different. The moment I told you with PE also was replicated the very first time I heard NWA. I was like, this is a different group of people. We don't ever hear from them. They sound angry. They do not sound. They do not sound. They don't sound well adjusted. Something. I'm interested in this.
Well adjusted.
These are some brothers that need a hug, because something's wrong here. And of course, I loved it. Right, like I bought into it. These are groundbreaking moments, because at that moment, hip hop was not that street yet. Even in its best moments, you weren't hearing from the gangsters. All y'all New York and East Coast stuff, and even your Philly. Sharif, let's try and rescue you from anything. What Philly got? What Philly got for hip hop?
Listen, first of all, I was in Atlanta yesterday, and the brother he does battleground rap, like he organizes battleground rap, and he said, "Yo, Philly is like the spot for battleground rap and underground hip hop." Like, so he was calling out. I was just like, he was like, "Where you going?" I told him. He's like, "Oh man, I was there not too long ago," and we were, he was naming places I wasn't even aware of, like where people were coming together for ciphers and battle rap and all that. I was like, this is a whole thing. He's like, yeah, this is the whole thing. They like studio, like recording it, and got some streaming service. But I just wanted to remind the audience, like, Citizen Stewart likes to clown that I rep Philly hard, but I do want you to know, typically he brings Philly up first. Like in the opening monologue, go back and listen. He mentioned Grover Washington. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to stop his flow, but he points the Philly flag, pretty often too. So sometimes he doesn't realize what he does it. Afterwards, he's like, "Damn it, I said Philly again." He's like pulling out his hair.
This brother is clowning me in the third person. He's talking about me like I'm not here, right? So let me redeem myself and just say this much right now. This is a conversation about hip hop, of which Philly has none. But
Oh,
I will say this.
oh.
I will say this. Let me finish. As a Black music lover and musician, Philly is the capital. Like Motown has nothing on Philly when it comes to Lamont and Dozier. You know that these pairs of people that did things. McFadden and Whitehead is one of the baddest duos ever. Like the amount of stuff that came out of Philly and the Philadelphia sound
Gamble
and
and Huff.
Gamble and Huff. You know,
Philadelphia.
listen, stop it. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Ain't No Stopping Us Now. All this, that type of music, that Philly
Billy
sound, the
Paul,
OJs,
Teddy
like
P.
the OJs. One of the coldest tracks ever is For the Love of Money. If you just go listen to the bass of that song, and there was nothing that was happening like that. So I will give Philly, all of us do, on everything except for hip hop. Because what y'all got? Schoolie D? What y'all got?
Schoolie D.
Schoolie D?
Schoolie D.
Who got totally clowned by
too.
Ice Cube, right? Like y'all should have kicked Schoolie D out of Philly after what Ice Cube did to him, right? Like,
I don't even remember that.
No, bruh. He tried to take on the whole West. When the West Coast stuff was just getting started, people used to play with the West Coast. People used to play. You used to brush them off as a bunch of Jerry Curl Negroes.
I was about to say it was the Jerry Curl.
It was a bunch of Jerry Curl Negroes out. You know, blah blah blah. Folks they weren't ready for the level of gangster aggression that was taking place in California at the time. So the whole Ice Cube, NWA, Ice-T, DJ Quick, Too Short, a lot of that stuff was not taken seriously in the beginning. It should have been, because some people pick fights that they couldn't finish, like your Philly Schoolie D. But anyways, let's keep going.
wait. I mean, that's a pretty heavy gauntlet that you threw down. And Philly has no hip hop. So I do want to just share that. Schoolie D, the 552, which I had deep loves. That's where Shoemaker was, like on the Park side. But if you want to talk about the Roots, if you want to talk about
it's a music group. Those are musicians.
That's hip. Wait a minute, how are they musicians? They use musicians. They're not all you know what I mean? Like,
no, those are musicians.
Wait a minute. Their lead singer is a musician. Malik B is a musician.
Well, first of all, you called him a singer. You didn't call him a rapper. You called him a singer.
Who? I called him a singer? No.
Yeah, you just said.
Hip-hop.
You said their lead singer.
Their lead
It's literally what you just said.
That's not what I meant. You know what I meant. The lead singer. But I mean, just the idea that Tariq
Black Thought is this.
Yeah, to not like recognize like just the heft that he brings, the gravity shaping force that he is every time he grabs a mic, like.
Okay, so let me redeem myself here, because I'm looking at a list: Meek Mill, Will Smith. I think Will Smith, and this came up in a conversation with Charles Cole, Dr. Cole, and I said to him, one of the coldest lines in hip hop is when Will Smith said, "I dare y'all to make a whole album without a curse word," and Charles was like, "That's the corniest thing I ever heard." I was like, because you never heard a whole album without a curse word that was still good, right? Show me your artistry. Make a whole album without a nigga, a hoe, or a curse word. Right. And get back to me when you do that, because I want to see what your artistry looks like after you do that. Well, Philly produced one rapper who did it, Will Smith. Some of y'all gonna say he wasn't what he was. Y'all need to stop. He was good middle class rapper. Black Thought.
Right. And when you see his skill, just for Will Smith, like when you actually see his skill, like, so he was purposely trying to cross over and engage, different audiences. But like when you just hear like some of his like, just straight up, here's the lyrics and the joint, like when him and DJ Jeff, what's the name of the joint with him? Yeah, Jeff was going back and forth with like, talking about his DJ, like, yo, bro, like and his wordplay and the speed and being able to have this versatility. You know what I mean? He chose to go a certain route. If I think he's one of those people, he could have went any route he wanted. You know what I'm saying?
And the music was better than people give it credit for.
Yeah, he's underrated. The Fresh Prince is very underrated. Very underrated.
And
Brand New Funk, I still play to this day.
Yeah, that's the joint I meant. That Brand New Funk joint, like that. You can play that anytime. You know what I'm saying?
And you can play it in front of anybody.
Yeah,
you can play it at the cookout with your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say my firstborn, who is behind the scenes on this program here right now. I can remember playing full Will Smith albums around him because
You knew it was all right.
I knew it was all right. It was already approved. It was like the Disney of hip hop. But I was tripping with what I just said because y'all also got Lil Uzi Vert, Benny Siegel. I mean,
Tough Crew.
Lil
Like,
Dicky.
I mean,
I don't know if
3
y'all want to
Times
claim
Dope,
Lil
all that.
Dicky, but E.
3 times, Three Times Dope is
Dope.
one of the most underrated, groups out there.
Y'all got some stuff.
Like 3 Times Dope is like that. Matter of fact, I was talking to another driver, and he was lamenting the fact that Philly and a lot of these folks, he was upset his nephew didn't know who 3 Times Dope was. He's like, yo, they losing the history. It's like, it's all right to create new stuff, but you should always be connected to history. I was eating all that up. I was like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think, and we can't mention Will Smith without shouting out the big O. You know what I mean? The school, the castle on the hill. Overbrook, you know what I mean? Gotta shout. I mean, just listen, just in 88, in the 80s when I went there, like we had like 3. Well, one was already a start because I think that year, one of those years, Will was in Europe while we were in high school. Like you're like, yeah, Will's in Europe right now. Did y'all know? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But Will, Steady B, and Cool C all within a school, and it wasn't like creative and performing arts where like all the boys, the men, and all this kind of. It wasn't like a art school, but it was a community, a neighborhood. It was West Philly, and you still had all of these hip hop legends on your floor, right? Like, and of course nobody had any idea like what they would become, but just during that time frame of hip hop, and these are your classmates and stuff, right? Like, and it was just like a normal thing.
And if people are looking for somebody who is newer and has that energy, I would definitely say for folks to check out Del P here in Philly. Master Street, DELL-P. Check him out.
Check him out.
Fire.
Wait a minute, hey Gabe, you know this, but Chris, Del P, when you listen to him, I remember we had a talent show at the middle school I was a principal at. And when he said when he wrote it down, I was like, I didn't even know the young boy rap. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, bet. You know what I mean? Because the talent show, middle school, everybody's like they trying their stuff out. And that was the first time I heard him, so then to later on, now he's Del P. I'm like, yo, I still remember him going up on stage during the talent show. I love, you know what I mean? Like everything goes back to schools, man. Like just how much talent is within our schools that gets, shut down, circumvented, undermined, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Biggie has this line where he talks about that. He kind of gives a shout out to all the teachers that thought I wouldn't be.
Wouldn't be nothing.
Yeah. Like, and you hear a lot of that actually throughout the lyricism of hip hop artists. And you have to think, first of all, I'd encourage anybody to try and write a decent set of bars. Just go and do it. Like because y'all like with them old folks that back in the day, y'all just talking over records. Well, that was more true back in the day. I mean, like when you had the hip hoppity kind of like stuff, and even when you started getting into Curtis Blow, it was starting to change in terms of you had to have more skill. It wasn't just MCing. Like MCing turned into rapping. MCing was more of, I think, a loose art form, but rapping became like you had to have some lyrical skill, of which the easier it sounded, the harder it was, right? Like you go and try and write it. First of all, let me back up. I used to be the Vicious Kid Fly.
Let's go.
Back in the day. I never pulled this out. Sharif, you know me for years. I've never tried this out. I used to be the Vicious Kid Fly. I'll tell you why. Because my beats are infectious and they make you high. Gold is the rhythm. There's no death or soul. Before I even make them their certified gold, right? Like, listen, this used to be me.
You still remember it. All right.
Because this, you have to.
Citizen Stewart. I got bars when I was 7 years old. My first rhyme, I was 7 years old, man. We have a rap. It's all about Christmas. It's full of laughs and happiness. Santa Claus goes from door to door to give you gifts you never saw before. You wake up in the morning and go down the stairs. You see a lot of clothes and things to wear. Christmas, very hype. You always get toys, all the fresh types. 7 years old. I'm like, it's like, you know what I mean?
See, I hope you
Look
put
at
that
all
on
this
your
talent.
last album, Gabe. Like, you know what I mean? And Gabe should talk about his, you know what I mean? Like he's still in, like, you know what I mean? Like he's still all in, right? And
Yeah.
and not just promoting the culture and supporting the culture, but the connection to resistance movements, you know what I mean, which is one of my favorite parts of music is like, our martial arts teacher used to talk about like the drum can provide the rhythm to a revolution.
That's right.
And that the first weapon ever banned was the drum, right? Like there was a reason that they banned the drum, from our people using it, right? Like it mobilized, it informed, it energized, it politicized, right? Like all the things. And so grateful for that. So I'd love to, also, Gabe,
I
I
can
love
add on to that.
Christmas joint, but also
yeah. No, I can add on to that. No, that was just when I was 7
years old. No, that's what I'm saying.
I
Like
wanted
that's
to show you how far back it goes.
How old were you, Chris? How old were you when you were Kid Vicious?
Bro, I don't know, about like 6th grade, something like that.
Yeah,
7th
sounds
grade,
about right.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say though, man.
Yeah, jump in there.
I think when Yasin Bey, formerly known as Mos Def, sit on his first album, Black on Both Sides, if you want to know where hip hop is going, where are you going? And you raised a great point, Brother Sharif, when you said, let's really look at our education system. Let's look at the ways in which our people are being miseducated, and the ways in which we've been disinvested as communities for decades. And so it's no surprise that the music reflects a people who have been disinvested, who have been oppressed, who have been all these things. And so when I look at hip hop and my approach to it, I'm always trying to seek ways to still bring the creativity and the art form, because at the root of it, it's still art, it's still entertainment. But most importantly, and that's I really say most importantly, is that, as Paul Robeson said, if you're going to be a part of this, use it towards our people, use it to be revolutionary, use it to be radical. And that message to me is missing. And there's always going to be people who desire it, who want music that's bangs, but also still has a message, still has in the spirit of, like you said, Public Enemy and, Dead Prez and, so many others, Immortal Techniques and all these guys, right, who really understood the importance, the Jungle Brothers, the list goes on around Tribe Called Quest. There's so many folks Queen Latifah, who understood that, like, we can make music that's yeah, man, come on, man. I still play, a lot of those older records because it still gives me fuel when I'm doing the work. I can still go to those records to kind of get inspired and be empowered.
I actually I would love to see more information or more education publicly about the branches of hip hop. And there are some branches that I think bear bad fruit. There's some rotten branches, and then there's some life-giving branches. And y'all have mentioned it a couple of times here, like the Black nationalist hip hop. So you've got groups like Public Enemy is the big dog in that. But I don't know if y'all have ever heard Paris.
Of course.
If you like
West Coast all day long, Paris, man.
Paris is still putting out albums that people don't know about, like lots of them, that are 100% from beginning to end. Like Sharif, if you haven't listened to a full Paris album, it's you all day long, right? From beginning to end. It's none of the counterproductive, toxic, anti-Black corporate hip hop at all. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite, right?
I'm going to check it out. Yeah, I've been listening to a whole, snippets here or there, but I'll definitely check that out.
It's Black Panther radio, basically, on hip hop. Is what it is, just updated. So from the 90s till now, he's been putting out these albums. There's this underground hip hop culture where it is battle raps and you have to be good at it, and it's still like it was back in the day, and they're like gotten faster and more crazy with their skills and their battle skills, and that still takes place today, and that will never be corporate. You will never see, if you go and Google this and you look at some of those battles, you are watching the outgrowth of the old hip hop still continuing with the battle stuff, right? And that still exists today, and it's not owned by Sony or Warner Brothers or anybody else. You can't own it, right? So that stays underground, as a matter of fact. So people listen to underground hip hop. That's one branch. There's the corporate hip hop, the stuff that we're being sold that I call the opioids, the fentanyl of hip hop. It is the corporate hip hop made to have us have a self-defeating soundtrack in our ears all day long that makes us hate ourselves, hate our women, hate our lineage, hate our history, hate our position, social position, and make us want to kill each other. That's actually another branch of hip hop. Y'all just mentioned like Jungle Brothers. Like back in the day, there was this, this Grateful Dead hip hop.
So what was that group called?
Native Tongues.
Native Tongues. Yeah,
so you had De La Soul and Jungle Brothers and Tribe Called Quest,
Moni B.
which Moni, well, yeah, a little bit Moni B, but it was a more granola black man hip hop. It was conscious and not angry conscious. It was like, brothers, blah, blah, blah. The angry consciousness. now listen, the first time I heard X-Clan.
Oh yeah. That's a whole different. Right.
That's I think that's the one Chris samples the most. Like every other show.
That was my listen.
But again,
the
shout
first
out to
time I
Brother
heard
Jay.
it.
Brother Jay, another underrated artist.
Oh my God.
Brother Jay.
Do the joy you always do.
This is protected by the red, the black, and the green with the key.
Yep.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
It was not necessarily politically correct hip hop, but again, how do you get through an entire album without a nigga, a bitch, or a hoe?
Right.
Without killing somebody, without I got to make my money and you got to get yours, without gross capitalism as the main feature of it. How do you get through a whole hip hop album and have none of that? Well, I can tell you how. You're either Paris or X-Clan or PE or one of these groups. And I don't know why I keep losing this argument, because people think that I'm making an anti-hip hop argument. Well, really what I'm making is an anti-corporate fentanyl, putting stuff in your kid's ear.
There's definitely a difference. I mean, if people don't recognize that there's a difference and that there's an impact, right? Like the whole idea that whatever you listen to that has no influence, and you count the hours and the time that people spend listening, like, that it's utterly ridiculous. It's a silly conversation on some levels, but we have to have it because so many people just don't realize, like, we're pumping stuff into our children's ear, into their into their unconsciousness. In your conscience is one thing. It's like what you hear, it's what I worry about is like what influences the unconscious level of our children, our youth, and our people, right? Like, and the energy of the community gets undermined and hijacked in so many different ways. And this is one of the ways, right? Like, and so, we have to just be, careful. Listen, this is different, but it tells a story. When we were in Iran, when we got back, I remember my mother sharing an article with me where the CIA actually mentioned like how much, like propaganda, how much money they were spending on propaganda just on the sound and airwaves into Iran, right? Like, like while they're blocking things from coming in, they were like saturating their sound and airwaves, you know what I mean, with different stuff that they felt could undermine their sense of culture and unity as a people. This is the CIA, like what they were doing. And they were public about like, this is how much we asked Congress for. And it was just around music and art and things like that they wanted to just pump into the country, right? And it's the CIA, so they're not doing it for because they just like love a group of people or a country, right? They were doing it for very specific battle plans. And on a micro scale, why would we think that it's any different than here and with our sound waves and with our culture and with our communities?
I love that you're raising that, Sharif, because I feel like, during this 50th anniversary, what I've been saying the entire years thus far is, we got to represent and celebrate and love on, those pioneers and, all the folks, the Grandmaster Cazes of the world and, you know, the MC Lights of the world and raise them up. But at the same time, you know, we have to make it a balanced conversation about what 50 years has brought to our people, what 50 years of this music has brought to the culture, and that the reality is it has not been all good. You know, for as much as we're doing, and I'm hearing about all these, you know, concerts happening this summer, and definitely August 11th is going to be a big one. I believe at Yankee Stadium on August 11th. You know, the reality is like, yeah, we can do that and we can have all these acts, but I'm interested in the conversations, right? I'm really going to be interested in the 50-year conversations on, you know, what's happened. You know, are artists in a better position? Are our people in a better position? What's happened, to your point about the corporatized hip hop? What opportunities do we have with the streaming platforms, right? And so if there are many, as you say, underground artists who now can just upload to an Apple Music or to a Tidal or to a whatever platform that's out there, Bandcamp, on their own and build their own audiences and what have you, you know, how does that impact the culture, right? You know, I can name tons of artists who I follow and work with who are amazing, you know, Akua Naru, you know, who's an incredible sister doing amazing, you know, has amazing albums out there, you know, Soul Science Lab, amazing albums out there. But again, you got to go searching a little bit more to find it. But it's still out there. And so I think being able to have a balanced conversation about what hasn't worked, but also what can we continue to do. I mean, look, man, when I was in Cuba, Brother Sharif, I saw the brothers in the corners still ciphering. You know, the Spanish was going too fast, so I couldn't understand it. But the beat was there, right? The beat was there. So I understood the beat. They were on, you know, you know, the cadence was crazy. The delivery was crazy. You know, I saw it in Palestine. Same thing, you know. So there are several times that I've been overseas, man, and just been inspired by these artists who are incredible. And it just goes to show how global it is. But we got to take ownership of it at the same time.
Take ownership. Listen, self-determination is the root of any victory, bro. Is clear-eyed vision and self-determination, you know. And also just want to shout out, like, you know, when you talk about like what went awry or what, you know, what's missing or what should be part of the discussion, you know, we're today's the 16th, and you know, our most famous Black Panther Party cub is Tupac. And today's his birthday. So, you know, shout out to, you know, right. To Tupac. And I often think, you know, and a lot of us think about like, where would he be in the movement and the work and the conversations that you talked about today, if he were, you know, still alive, you know, where would Biggie be? Right. And so, you know, happy birthday to, you know, to Tupac. And, you know, it's interesting that the hip hop's, I think this conversation that you raised is critically important. You know, Gabe, like the conversation part of all of this, you know, my favorite, one of my favorite times of like being in an audience of a hip hop legend, we haven't mentioned them yet, was KRS-One. And it wasn't a song, it was a speech.
Right.
He had come to IUP to give a speech. Like the you know, the Black Student Union had brought him up for, you know, and initially, you know, I'm, you know, 18, 19. I'm just like, bro, I want to hear him talk. I want to hear, like, you know what I mean? I want to hear him like bust lyric. They were like, no, he's coming up to yo, bro. It is still by far one of my favorite times listening to a hip hop artist. And he made no rhymes, you know. He was talking, he was teaching, you know, the teacher was teaching. And that was like one of my favorite times ever. And I was just like, yo, I couldn't get enough. I was like, yo, the depth of some of these brothers, their revolutionary paradigms that they were operating from, that they were writing lyrics from. I find it, you know, I don't know if it always gets connected. I hope it gets connected even more, that, you know, hip hop's birthday is during August, Black August. And I hope that, you know, that's another connection that's made during these conversations, that Black August has a very particular position in our history, in the conversations, and the lessons, in our unit maps. And hip hop should be threaded, you know, throughout those conversations and lessons as well.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, one of the things when we think about, you know, how hip hop is birthed, and the idea that, you know, again, we're talking about a lack of investment in communities, right? And so we have a city like New York City and a community, a borough like the Bronx, you know, run down and lack of access to instruments and all those things. And so what are we doing? Okay, so we're going to take these records and we're going to dance to them, and we're going to turn these funk records that we're all dancing to.
It's the Milk Crate basketball court, right? Like it's the same thing. We still making magic out of Milk Crate basketball courts. That's what we did with music. Yeah.
There you go. You know, we're going to know that these neighborhoods that we live in, we don't own them, we don't run them. So you know what? We're going to take the spray can. We're gonna show who owns the neighborhood, right? Who really owns the block. You know, we're gonna take this cardboard that was sitting out back about a dumpster, and we're gonna break dance. I mean, these are the things that, you know, shows how young people have always been the spark for change and revolution. And so I love the way that we can always provide that part of the narrative.
You know, that Clint Smith has a video on hip hop where he talks about the 64, 65 civil rights culmination in the Voting Rights Act, and a lot of civil rights legislation passed that once that happened, many of the people at the forefront of that push let off the brakes on a lot of things, and they didn't pay attention to urban disinvestment for the years preceding hip hop's kind of like emergence. So you had decaying kind of city services, decaying projects, decaying kind of like broken glass everywhere, you know, right? You had this, right? So that gives birth to feedback from the people living in that, from the young people living in that. They start telling their stories over music. And at some point, you know, Chuck D says, or someone says, hip hop is the CNN of urban Black America, right? That was true for the time, and it ceased being that. It became, when, especially, excuse me, when corporate took over, it started and when white audiences started becoming the main audience for hip hop started becoming their imagination of us fed back to us.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So now they're selling us a version of ourselves back to us. And it's no longer the CNN reporting the broken glass and disinvestment from the hood as much as it is their memes and stereotypes of us as hoes and pimps and gangsters and killers and whatever, right? Being fed back to us and glamorized as the best of us. And then it creates an economic system. Nothing we should ever talk about when we talk about our existence in a capitalist country should be without some sort of analysis of the economics of this thing, right? Hip hop today, with many artists, and the label system of hip hop is very much financial slavery. They drown you in debt and own you for life, and they give you these 360 contracts that you can't get out of, and everything that you do is owned after that by somebody else, and you will have somebody who is making millions and tens of millions who is broke or has a Bentley given to them as a gift, but has no kind of earning of their revenue. And we are even participating in part of that ourselves. Some of us are enslaving ourselves. You can't talk about this without talking about the economic system of selling sex and degeneracy to our young people as a product, and enslaving the people who do it financially, and having entire parts of Beverly Hills populated by people who are living off of our ignorance about business, about hip hop, about like all of the stuff behind it and whatnot. We just need some deeper analysis of these things. Our kids are being fed fentanyl. And in Beverly Hills, there's somebody whose kids got a great lifestyle set ahead of them based upon our misery, right? And I don't want to oversell this story, but I mean, you can't ignore Mos Def, who is now no longer Mos Def, but others are giving us all the clues to this. They're telling us, I'm not making this up. The conscious artists are telling us that this is how it works. This is how it goes down. Actually, what triggered that, Sharif, something you said, what triggered me thinking that when you said, where would Tupac be today if he had continued on living and doing his work? And what I thought in that moment is, what if Tupac had not become the financial slave to Suge Knight, right? And Death Row Records, right? Fentanyl King, now in prison for something else, right? Who killed conscious hip hop? You mentioned KRS-One. Why is it harder for a KRS-One to get a deal today than anybody else? Right? It's easier for a pimp or a prostitute or somebody else. It's easier to sell our daughters, some of these folks that are not the Moni Loves or the Queen Latifahs of the world, but the ones who are stripping.
Mm.
Right. This is my old
I'm
man.
gonna tell you, man.
It's my old man time.
I'm gonna tell you, brother. I've been in meetings, and Sharif knows this because I've been I was doing music for a long time and putting out mixtapes and putting out albums and putting out solo material. I've been in meetings with these guys at these labels, with an artist friend of mine and myself, where they heard the music, they loved the music, it's lyrical, all those kinds of things, and literally have the staff say, hey, would you mind incorporating some like more gangster stuff? Like that's literally what they said at the closing of the meeting, after hearing the music, after saying they loved the music and loving the flows and the delivery, all this kind of stuff. Hey, but would you mind, would you be able to talk a little bit more about your lifestyle and incorporate maybe like some gangster stuff? I mean, they literally said, use the word gangster in the narrative, right? And so we're like, okay, this is really what this is about. Okay. And so you hear those stories all the time, but to actually experience it for yourself and like to be in the room, it's like, wow, okay, this is really what this is about. This is really what this is. And so, we have this sort of outgrowth of indie artists across the planet who are saying to themselves, to your point, like, yo, man, we're no longer gonna, submit ourselves to these labels and to these corporations that are stealing from us, our masters, taking our masters from us, right?
Own your masters. Who said
own
that?
your masters, right?
Yes.
Quote unquote. And let's unpack that a bit, right? But the reality is, man, it's like, what can we do to take back the culture, to not only take it back, but to also look towards the young people who are forging a new way? I think that's also got to be a part of the conversation, because again, they are out there, they're just not given a platform. And the reality is that also is that there's too many, and I'm gonna just keep it 100 with y'all, there's too many non-Black people who are also at the forefront of these publications, who are now being the ones to decide where this culture is going. They're the ones coming up with these top 10 lists and top 20 lists and best MC and best group and best producer of all time. And, you ain't never even come from our neighborhoods. You never even come from where we come from. You don't have the ear that we have to hear the music in the way that we've understood it. Liking your music and being able to understand the culture is two different things. And even with the publications, that's been a historic problem.
I mean, it's so deep that you like saw that firsthand, first of all, like to be asked that in the meeting to incorporate some more of your lifestyle, the gangster stuff. And I'm sitting there when you say that, thinking to myself, like, incorporate my lifestyle. Okay, I got up this morning, my back hurt.
Shut up.
I forgot to pick up some butter yesterday. Do you really want to hear my?
You want to hear that?
You want to hear my real lifestyle?
Got you.
The second point that you make there that I think is so important is this thing around the tastemakers. So many of these rap pages and rap social media juggernauts are not owned by us. I just saw one get unveiled, didn't have a single Black employee, but it's one of the most kind of trafficked social media sites, especially on Instagram. Millions plus followers every day. And and you look at its feed, it's all Black.
Yep.
Not a single Black employee, but the feed is all Black. And what they're doing is they're taste making for white folks who should be considered the real gangster or the real hip hop or the real whatever. So they're taste making, and we're playing into a lot of it. Some of us are actually even, trafficking those sites and not knowing, as a matter of fact, who owns them. And DJ Vlad's a good example also. I mean, DJ Vlad is like, y'all watching all these DJ Vlad videos, and DJ Vlad is like the complete like hustler. Like he's the definition
culture vulture, bro.
He is the definition of everyone who stole money from Little Richard and James Brown and others in their early days. He is the definition of how all of our Black artists back in the 50s and 60s were robbed, right? Yep. And we're playing into it again. So anyways, at the end of this show, and I'm so glad I got to get my old man on this show, right? Like, listen,
you got to get off my lawn.
Listen, I got to get off my damn lawn with your stuff. I just want to wrap at the end here, with each of you, because this is where I think the most important part of the conversation is, and you hit it at the end here, is just really what do we do? And I think one part of that, one positive step, is supporting underground hip hop, non-corporate underground hip hop as a cultural mandate to support non-corporate underground hip hop, and especially conscious hip hop, because if you don't support it, no one will, and we'll just continue to be suckers for the corporate hip hop. And the other thing is, I know no one's gonna listen to this or do it. I got a couple of upstairs right now who ain't gonna do it, like rebuff corporate hip hop. I failed as a father. I got a Kanye lover upstairs, right? And I know if I go to this ungrateful young person and tell him this is my house, you ain't gonna play that in my house, I know what's gonna happen if I do that. I can predict what
was Josh's first album that he had brought? What was that, George?
Josh brought home, I can remember this years ago, and this is, I failed as a father many times over. I just want people to know on this. We talk a lot about parenting and education. I'm a failure in some father things, but anyways, this young near Negro brought home a Nelly CD, and I remember just staring at it like.
Let him rock, man. He wanted to dance a little bit, man. Shout out to St. Louis, man. Shout out to St. Louis.
What's he saying? That ain't rapping. That ain't hip hop. This is let me play some of this, Fear of a Black Planet for you. Nah, bros, we're dancing now. Whatever. You called it Southern grammar. That ain't Southern grammar. That's ignorance. That's just straight ignorance. That's unintelligence speaking loudly. Anyways, so now I got a Kanye lover.
Every time that story comes out, I crack up. It's the funniest thing in the world. Josh,
come on.
Like Andre said, South got something to say.
Well, listen, I love Southern hip hop. I just don't know the St. Listen, I don't know that St. Louis is that, but the Outcast and all of that, I loved when they came on board. But I'm just saying, if I go upstairs and I say, listen, we're not doing Kanye in this house, then I have just created the biggest Kanye lover ever, because that's the way kids are. They don't like to listen to their parents. And now I've become that version of you just talking over record. Kanye ain't no genius. You keep calling him a genius.
Wow.
Kanye just got ugly shoes and a whole bunch of like anti-Semitism, like that's me now. Right. But I need to say more than that, because this thing about him being a Black billionaire, and this thing about it being about capitalistic dreams and aspirations, and this thing about corporate being good, is the thing that I think we need to do some training on of our young people, to give them an intellectual defense. We need to start preparing. Self-defense includes intellectual defense and financial defense. And we live in a capitalist country that, that whole thing about, either you're at the table or you're on the menu. Well, either you understand an economic system or you become the product. And in many cases, we are the product, and we're raising our kids to be the product, and we got to stop it. We got to stop it. So.
And I would even also say, to your point, man, we need to highlight, of course, the artists that we love that are bringing the energy, the Kendrick Lamars, the J. Coles, so on and so forth. But again, I hate to say it, folks, but even those guys are still old now to young folks. I mean, those guys are pushing 40 at this point. You know what I mean? Like, they've been in the game since like 08, 09, 2010. So the person who's, a teenager now, who was born in like 2008, the same year that they was coming out with their mixtapes, to them, K-Dot and Cole are old heads. I mean, they're probably still GOAT status to them, but we need to identify who are the K-Dots and Coles of now, who are 21 to 22 years old. That's the key. Because again, Andre 3000 just got hyped for all this first he released on Killer Mike's new album. And I'm like, okay, it's dope that we're still bigging up Andre 3000, but he's been in the game since 94. You know what I mean? Like, the reality is, like, who is the Andre 3000 of 2023 who's 19 years old? That's the key part. And we need to hype that person up, find that person, whoever they are, and give them a platform, because they're out there. We just got to find them.
We got to find them. Yeah. You say they out there. I'm wondering.
No, I mean, I think when they're there, but then it's also like, who's
getting support.
Be there. Yeah. Who could be there, right? Who's thinking about something, but they're, you know, being slammed, you know, for their artistry, their creativity, right? Like, because a lot of that takes practice, right? How many people's practice gets clowned and sabotaged in such a way that they just give up? They're like, you know what? You know, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard. So I'm thinking about that middle school kid, you know.
Sure.
I'm thinking about Del P, the creativity, and where they're practicing, they're trying to figure out where, you know, where they are. Because a lot of times when we're talking about like trying to find ourselves, a lot of times I think trying to find yourself is really trying to find your creativity. Like that's what it's about. Like, where's my creativity? Where's my creative language, my creative artistry? Where is that? And how do I practice it in a safe space where I see how does it resonate? Does it jive with? Oh, can I tweak this? Like, where can people do that? Like, a lot of times it's within schools, right? In different ways, in different spaces, right? Like I remember I was going to leave Mastery to go to the district at one point, out of rage, just, you know, to support schools, the creative schools, you know, like the what they call it, admission-based schools. And I got invited to apply to be that superintendent. And I almost did it out of rage because, you know, our creative and performing arts high school would not allow students to use hip hop as their audition. You had to audition to get to the school, and you could not use hip hop. And I was so incensed that I just wanted to apply for the position just to change some of the conditions like that, or some of the, you know, the rules like that, because I thought it was such a ridiculous rule. That this is a creative arts high school. Students have to audition, but you can't use, this is now recently, right? Like, I'm talking about like within the past, you know, 5-6 years that they could not, well, I'm out for 4 years. So maybe 10 years. Cause it was, you know, I've been out of the school districts for 4 years now. So you add a 5, so 9 years ago, right? Like, you couldn't use that to perform, to audition, to get into a creative arts high school. Like, I was so angry, man, that I almost like left my beloved Shoemaker just to apply, you know, for that. So, because I was like, that's so ridiculous. I'm like, and if that is one of the rules, who knows what other kind of rules are out there that's blocking Black genius from getting into specialized high schools. You know what I mean?
You were going to rage apply for a job.
Man,
see, that's too much hip hop. That's what happens when you listen to too much hip hop, bro. See, you out here rage applying for jobs.
Listen, the anger fuels, you know, the rage fuels some of this stuff, right? You know what Malcolm say, when you're sad, you know, you just wring your hands, you might not do nothing. It's really when you get angry is when change happens. But, you know, for me, my last word around this is really like, this is why I loved Nguzo Saba, because I think it applies to this. And I think, you know, when you're talking about like, you know, finding that next group, or finding, you know, supporting where that self-determination exists, you know what I mean, with the KRS Ones, with the public, just consciousness, you know, as a part of this. Like, art is supposed to make you think, and not think less of yourselves and your community and your people and your women and your daughters and your mothers, but, you know, to think critically. And, you know, Kuji Chakali is back to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. I'm like, where we can reinsert that and highlight where it's already happening in hip hop culture, you know, like, it needs to happen. Shout out to, you know, Dr. Chris Emden and the team that
no doubt
has been working diligently on hip hop ed, you know, forever at this point, right? And like a whole curriculum, lesson plans, and getting people to think critically about, you know, the art. And I remember as our teachers used to do a whole unit maps of resistance through the arts, right? Like, how do we insert resistance? And resistance isn't always just how people think about it. Sometimes resistance is just resisting the anti-Black messages that you are surely going to hear. Hip hop could be a part of that, you know, that buffer.
Well, I appreciate both of you brothers for this very important discussion today. You know, we should keep having it. Excuse me. As August 11th approaches, we'll probably be hearing more about this. And I hope that people go into the discussion with a lot of what we talked about today, being conscious about it. Sharif, where you ended, to me, is like this perfect place of be critical thinkers. What is being sold to me? And who is selling it to me? and how are they profiting off of it, and how is it improving my child's mental health and cultural affirmation, and how is it improving my child's sense of self and their knowledge of where they exist in the grand universal design. How is this helping them understand themselves, right? Know thyself. And if it's doing anything negative on any of those accounts, be a critical thinker and also be a resistance. Like, resist with what you buy, with what you listen to, with what you participate in, what you allow other people to participate in. Challenge, right? Like, that has to be the main thrust. You're not bad. You're not nearly as bad as you think you are if you are a sucker to this system. If you are sucking down what they're selling to you or whatnot, as much as it's pumping you up to feel like you everything, like you're going to shoot up the place, right? While you got a gun in your waist, you ain't about to shoot up the place, right?
Right.
Like.
And real quick,
go ahead, brother.
Because I know that I got to run real quick, brothers. But two things: I can't leave this conversation without saying that the brother who made me actually want to make music was the God Rakim. So peace to the God Rakim. First time I heard, I ain't no joke.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, that was
that whole song front to back. I know the whole Paid in Full album and Followed albums. If you put those on, if an alien said, you got to save Earth, I would do those 2 albums. You know what I'm saying?
And where can people find your record to make sure at the end of that you share?
We'll do, brother. We'll do. And also, I want to say this too, man. Shout out to the DJs, because oftentimes in hip hop, we miss out on the DJs who not only made the party rock, but was so instrumental in the 70s and the 80s as far as getting started. It's very important to notice that it was Eric B. and Rakim, Eric B. first. That's definitely Fresh Prince. Dazzy Jeff first, right? And so we have to understand even the ways in which we understood the DJ from a historical standpoint.
Here's a shout out for me and my DJ.
You already know. I mean, they used to have whole mixes, like, right, in these records. It was Pete Rock and CL Smooth, right? And so it's just important to note that. You can find me go on Instagram. Good Brother Gabe, that's GoodBrotherGabe, Good Brother Gabe on Instagram, IG. Hit me up, DM me if you want more information about the work that we're doing, not only in the communities around mental health, supporting Black boys, Black men, around resources and services, also working to dismantle the prison industrial complex, support political prisoners, such work like that. And also just to get more music, I'm Gabriel Prosser. That's Gabriel, GABRIEL PROSSER on Bandcamp. You can get all the products there.
Shout out to the revolutionary Gabe Prosser.
You already know, because that was also intentional, because we came from an era where it was all these gangsters and Italian Gambinos and mafia guys. I said, no, we're gonna teach you about the guy who was trying to start a revolution back in 1800. So man, shout out to everybody, and thank y'all again for having me. Salute to hip hop for another 50 years, y'all.
We appreciate y'all. Even as we have been talking right now, my background team has been tweeting out, and because our tweets have been, kind of covered and shout out to Hip Hop News or whoever is like doing this, whatever. But Dave Mack has followed me now, and he's a promoter for Spotify, YouTube, and Sony Music. DM him for his rates and services, because he's a talent scout in hip hop with hiphopcanada.com. Apparently, Davey has not listened to the show yet, so. So when he does, hi. Anyways, this has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with us. We appreciate all that you do, fam. Share the show with everybody else, and we'll see you again next week for another episode. Peace.